Hi, I'm Skinny Cheeks. Today I'll be going through my first impressions of the new MMO from Amazon Game Studios, New World. This won't be a full review, but we'll have some pros and cons based on what I've experienced so far in the beta testing. I'll give an overview of the game from the perspective of someone who is now level 24. I'll talk about what I like and don't like, and how I feel the August 31st release is going to have an effect on the ESO player base. Alright, let's go ahead and get into it. So first off, I'll just give an overview for those that really don't know what New World is about. Keep in mind, I've only made it to level 24, so this is from the perspective of someone who is relatively new still. New World is an open world MMO that is currently beta testable until August 2nd for anyone who has pre-ordered the game. The player base will be split into a number of different regions of the world to hopefully allow you to find one that has decent ping for you. Within these regions are different servers, so it will be something you'll have to coordinate with your guild or friends if many of you are wanting to jump in and play together. You start off with pretty standard character creation. More on that in a little bit when I talk about my pros and cons. One thing that you might notice right out of the gate is that you don't pick a class. New World's character progression for combat isn't built around different classes, but instead different weapon types. So based on what weapon you use, you'll have a different tree of skills to unlock. As of launch, there will be 3 one-handed weapons, 3 two-handed weapons, 2 ranged weapons, and 3 magic weapons, so a total of 10 options. As early as level 5, you can equip 2 weapons at a time, which you can quickly bar swap back and forth between. I can already see this being an area of the game that they can easily add to in future expansions to add even more build diversity. As of now, there are 45 different combinations of weapons you could equip, though some build options will be more optimal than others as your different weapons will scale with different stats. This is laid out in a really easy to read format on the attributes menu, and you can quickly tell which weapons scale with which stats. And a lot of the weapons do have secondary stats that they'll scale with too. And then you also have your standard constitution stat that is there for your health pool. You also get these nice little perks as well for hitting certain milestones and attributes invested. So as of my current leveling up, the ways that I've seen that you get attribute points so far are you get 3 points for each time you level up, and you also get them from bonuses on your gear. So for the way that combat actually plays out, you can have up to a maximum of 3 skills from each weapon line equipped, so a total of 6 skills at a time. This may sound a little light on the skills, especially comparing to some other MMOs, but this is a full action combat and not a tab targeting combat system like your traditional MMOs, and the standard attacks are manually operated, unlike WoW or Final Fantasy XIV. And then unlike ESO, where light attacks and heavy attacks are mostly there just to weave between your skills, they do have a bit more oomph to them. And then the light and heavy attacks for different weapons fire at different rates, and some of them also form combos when they're used. There is also active dodging and blocking, similar to ESO as well, so you do feel like you still have plenty to do in between your abilities. At least it has so far in my playthrough. The opening tutorial does a really great job of showing you this right at the start and makes it super easy to get right into. So I think that transitions pretty well into the non-combat stuff. After your initial opening tutorials, you'll start getting quests that are essentially more tutorials to show the different systems in the game and how to use them. So I won't go too in-depth in this video. There are a ton of different crafting systems split into crafting, refining, and gathering. As you can see by my levels on these here, it seems like the crafting ones are the most difficult to level, at least early on. The refining ones seem to level up just like you would think they would. They use different stations around the town, such as a smelter or a tanner, and the more you use them, the higher level you become in that skill, and the higher level materials you're able to process.
Nice.
Gathering works in a similar way. You can only gather the basic quality materials to start, such as young trees, iron ore, or common plants, but as you gather more and more, your skills will improve and you'll be able to collect higher quality and rarer materials from the world. It does seem on initial glance that some of these are going to be pretty grindy, but again, this is just from a new player experience. So I'll talk about the world itself now. It is a big open world where you can seamlessly transition between the different regions without load screens. This feels really nice. You set out on your adventure and you can just run anywhere and explore. The different regions do have different enemy levels though, so if you just start running somewhere without being led there from a quest you're on, you might find yourself running away pretty quickly afterwards. Higher level mobs can hit really hard and aren't too easy to overcome, especially solo. But again, on the seamless transitions, I really love that the world is just open and connected. plenty of locations to discover and lots of environment types, so I felt like I was really on an exploration, unlike I've felt in quite a while. This really opened my eyes to how much I miss this type of gameplay in ESO. Sure, the overland zones are beautiful in ESO and the quests are well written, but being in the end game for several years now, there really haven't been any tough challenges in the overland world, really since before 1 Tamriel when they did the level scaling. The sense of adventure and challenge on an open world scale is really refreshing. Don't get me wrong, there is wonderful challenging end game content in ESO, but it's all locked behind group instances or solo arenas. And maybe this is just because I'm a new player in New World and new players to ESO would get that same kind of feeling exploring the overland. I'm not sure. Maybe they do. And if that's the case, I'm a little jealous of that. But anyways, that kind of transitions into another part of the open world that I really enjoy. And that's being able to flag for open world PvP. So New World has decided to go the route where you can either flag yourself to enable or disable PvP. So if you don't want to fight with other players, you can run around the world, do your quests, explore with friends, and just not have that worry. At this point in my playthrough, I've probably spent about 80% of my time with PvP enabled though, and that worry really does add a lot of suspense. Most people aren't flagged, so when you're running around, you just run into other people that you can't fight, but this really does make you keep your head on a swivel. Like every little sound that you hear in the distance, it could be somebody coming to take you out. Sometimes I run around for 30 or 45 minutes without coming across another player that's flagged for PvP, but just knowing it might happen adds some suspense and thrill to the exploration. But it is really nice that you can turn it off too. Maybe you just want to go farm some materials, or you're tired and just want to knock out some quests without any hassle. That option is there, and I've enjoyed doing that as well. So now I'll go through the questing. So the main story has been pretty basic at this point. There are your more traditional main story and side story quests, but then there's also these faction quests where you earn reputation for one of the 3 factions that you choose to join. They're both PvP and PvE quests there. The PvP ones are interesting as those disappear if you die, and you can only do them if you have PvP enabled. So it definitely sucks to go out and complete a couple of these only to die and lose them. But like I was saying earlier, not knowing if that's going to happen or not, it really does add to the whole experience of running around overland. And then there are town board quests as well. These seem like very random quests that are generated to do a variety of things, from turning in materials to going out and killing specific enemy types. So if you just want to load up on quests and get a ton of XP, this is definitely one way to do it. So overall, the questing is okay. I don't think it's bad, but they've definitely been more enjoyable running around with a group doing them, and if you have PvP enabled. So lastly, in this overview, I wanted to compare New World to some other games I've played, as a lot of the systems remind me of some of the other gaming experiences I've had. So first we'll compare to ESO. This is my main game I've played for a long time now, and since it is an action combat game, I think there will be a lot of comparisons to ESO. There are definitely a lot of differences, but let's go through some of the similarities. In both games, you have 2 skill bars with different weapons equipped and different skills on each bar that you can quickly swap back and forth between. If you have played ESO, I definitely recommend changing your default keybinds in New World to the same ones you use in ESO. It makes for a really smooth transition, and it just feels really good right out of the gate. I did this as well for my dodge key. So dodging and blocking is also set up in a similar way to ESO, though not exactly the same. Dodging doesn't give you iframes, it just moves you quickly, so you still have to be away from the attack to avoid it, unlike in ESO. But the active dodging and blocking is a big part of both of these games. Okay, for the next game, the open world exploration reminds me a lot of Fallout 76, especially with the PvP enabled or disabled options. Say what you want about Fallout 76, but I actually had a pretty good time playing it at release, and I definitely want to revisit it at some point for another playthrough. Did it hold my long-term attention like an MMO might? No, not really. I got pretty bored once I did about 20 hours or so of the endgame, but getting to the endgame was a lot of fun, and the big open world exploration reminds me a lot of the same vibes I'm getting from the open world of New World. So for the next game, I've personally never played old school RuneScape, but I've seen several people throwing around comparisons there when it comes to all of the different skill lines to level up. From what I've been told, RuneScape has very grindy skill lines, and New World seems to be pretty similar. The gathering and crafting all seem like they're going to take quite a bit of dedication to get to max rank. And then finally, I'm strangely getting some Diablo 3 vibes as well. Not really with the theme, but it does have that ARPG kind of feel in the combat at times, and the leveling and gear progression definitely give me similar feelings. Go out on quests, explore the world, kill lots of stuff, run around until your bags are getting full, come back to town, decon, refine materials, put on your upgrades, turn in your quests, and head back out for another round. So it definitely has a good flow to it, at least in the levels I've experienced so far. So yeah, I guess to me that core gameplay loop just feels very reminiscent of the loop I experienced in Diablo 3. So I think that gives a pretty broad overview of it. I didn't dive too deep into any of the specific systems, but maybe at a later date, after I've had time to invest a little bit more, we could revisit a little more in depth. All right, let's move on to the next section. We'll talk about what I like and what I don't like. So for the pros, the UI is very clean. Might be the best I've seen in any MMO. It is really easy to read, easy to understand right away. The inventory screen, the map, the skills, everything is just laid out so well. It just feels really polished and like a game releasing in 2021 should feel in that regard. Every 30 minutes or so, I come across something that I'm like, man, they nailed that. Another thing I've really enjoyed is the social aspect. So a lot of MMOs today don't really put a lot of emphasis on grouping up or doing things with friends up until the point where you have to do an instance dungeon or a raid. And while you can definitely solo the overland stuff in New World, to me it's felt so much better to run around as a duo or a small group, especially with PvP enabled. I've had fun running around by myself, but so much more fun when I've played in a group with others. And I think their design promotes that. There are some cons to questing with friends though that I'll talk about in a bit. Next up is the gathering. Man, I really feel like they nailed the gathering in a way that I haven't personally seen in an MMO. From cutting down trees to mining ore to skinning dead animals, nearly everything you come across is interactable and gatherable. The interface is really great too. From a distance, you just see the environment, but then coming up close, it's very easy to tell what you can and cannot gather. It feels rewarding, and actually having those gathering skills level up so that you can become more proficient at each one just feels really nice to me. Another system I thought they did really well with was the tutorial. It's just short and sweet and right to the point for combat, and then a series of quests that lead you through the different in-game systems. It doesn't feel like they're holding your hand too much, but also gives you enough info that you need to know so you aren't running around clueless. I think they found that sweet spot right in the middle. Next is the sound design. Man, oh man, both the music and the sound effects are top notch. Each town I've been to so far has its own theme, both musically and in town design, but the music in the open world is also really beautiful and sometimes in a haunting sort of way. The sound effects as well, from shooting your musket to the echoes in the distance when chopping down trees or mining ore, it all just creates for a really immersive environment. Next is the voice acting. So this would probably rank about average for a single player game, but it is something often left out of MMOs, and I'm really glad they included it. Elder Scrolls Online probably does this the best, but it is really nice to see the dialogue from the NPCs is voice acted. It really helps to create a more believable experience. Then this next one is a small thing, but I found it to be really neat. A lot of your standard MMO elements, such as enemies respawning and you being able to resurrect, and other things that people usually just kind of ignore because they know it's an MMO and that's just how it is, well, these things actually tie into the lore. So I won't go into any more detail than that, but as you play through the first hour or two, if you read the dialogue and watch the cutscenes, it will make sense to you. Just a cool little spin on it that makes the world feel a little bit more real. And then the final thing I'll put in the pros section is the exploration. I touched on this a little earlier in the overview, but it just feels so fun to just pick a point and run to it. There are so many beautiful landscapes to run into along the way and different points of interest to check out. The varied terrain leads into another aspect of exploration I'm really glad they included, and that's climbing. A lot of MMOs don't do too well with navigating terrain at different heights, and you kind of just have to hop around until you find a weird spot that you can jump onto to get higher. Well, New World actually has climbing in it. You can go up to different areas and jump and pull yourself up. So it is another small thing, but it's nice to enhance the element of exploration. All right, so now I'll go through a few things that I thought were good, but had some negatives to them, enough so where I didn't want to put them in the pros category. First off is the combat. I almost put this under the pros because some of it does feel really good, but there are definitely certain skills or even whole weapon lines that I've played so far that feel a bit clunkier than others. I've personally been really enjoying the spear and the musket, though I haven't tried out every weapon yet, so I won't even pretend to be an expert on this topic, but overall, I enjoy the feel of the combat, especially at early game. It feels much more interactive and engaging than other MMOs at early game. Typically, when people critique other MMOs combat, the response is always, well, you got to finish leveling up and get all your skills, and then it gets really good at that point. And I know with ESO, for example, it can feel a bit sluggish early on, but then combat gets really, really good once you are experienced and have your full skill bars and have gotten fast with it. Well, New World feels pretty decent right out of the gate for me. I can't speak for the very high level combat because I haven't made it there, but definitely overall, I'd say more good than bad I've come across with the combat. Next is the fall damage. You can pretty much jump off of any height and not die. It's kind of ridiculous. I put it in this section because for PvE purposes, I kind of don't mind. It's kind of fun to just be able to run around and jump and not worry about falling to your death. But it is also super unrealistic, and for PvP, it causes issues. If I'm chasing someone towards the edge of a cliff, they shouldn't just be able to jump off hundreds of feet down to their safety. They should have to either jump off and die or face me and die. Right. Yeah, so I think fall damage could use a little tweaking. Doesn't have to be overly punishing, but maybe a little worse than it is now. And then finally, no mounts and no fast travel except from fast travel locations. So there are aspects of this I like a lot. Not being able to zip through an area on a mount really allows you to take everything in and explore your surroundings. It makes your trip from point A to point B feel more like an adventure. You also can have one point that you check into and you can travel to from any location, but you can only do it once per hour. It has a cooldown on it. Every other fast travel must be done from another fast travel location. So comparing to ESO, it would be like if you could only travel to way shrines from other way shrines, not just from any point out in the wild. I'm a bit torn on it. I actually do really like it, especially for a new game like this. And having that temptation to just fast travel instead might take away some of that to try and just save myself a little time. They also don't let you fast travel when you have PvP quests. Since dying it causes you to lose those quests, they force you to go on foot, which again, I really like. I think at in-game though, this might start to get a little tedious, but we'll have to see. Once you've explored all the world, running around for 20 minutes from a location to another one might start to feel a little time consuming once you've done it a lot. Alright, now I'll go through the negatives. So first is the character creation. In some games, I'd probably say this is kind of a decent character creator. It really isn't bad, but in a role-playing game, I really want an in-depth character creator. There are a fair amount of hairstyles, skin tones, and faces to pick from, but no control over the features on the faces you pick or the way your body looks other than your gender. So there won't be a huge variety in appearances in the game. Maybe this is something they add more to at launch, I'm not sure. It isn't awful. I've definitely seen plenty of worse character creation in games, but maybe it should have gone in the okay section and not the negatives. I don't know. I just have really high standards when it comes to an RPG for how I can set my character up, especially in a 2021 released game. So hopefully that does get a little more love at some point. Alright, the next thing is no sharing of quests. If this is something you can do and I couldn't figure it out, just ignore this section and call me dumb. But I couldn't figure out a way to do it, and it seems like it would be a really nice feature if you could just share the quests you're on with your group mates. A lot of times we'd go to the faction board or the town board and end up with different quests, which isn't the end of the world. Some of them would end up near the same area and we just take turns helping each other out with the quests that we didn't have. But it would be nice if you could just line it all up and have the same quests to go out and accomplish together. It does seem like an easy enough feature to add. Alright, so the next part is the story. Right now it feels kind of meh to me, and I still have a ways to go in the main story, so maybe it does get a lot better, but as of level 24, it's not super engaging, and honestly, really haven't cared that much about the story. The adventure and playing with friends has been a good enough story in itself where I really didn't notice that I wasn't enjoying an in-game written story until making this list of pros and cons. There have been a couple of side quests though that were fun and had interesting dialogue, but for the most part, it feels like you're just doing them to get XP and move along. Again, I am really early in the game, so don't hate me if the story gets really good and I just haven't gotten there yet. And then finally, the swimming, or lack of, I should say. It's kind of hilarious, really. There is a breath meter and everything, but your character is unable to swim. They just walk on the bottom of the water. This feels like one of those things that they just didn't have time to finish, maybe. And they were like, well, we aren't pushing back the release date for that. Would love to see actual swimming added at some point, though, but not really a huge deal breaker or anything. And then finally, I just wanted to mention that I'm not commenting on the instance 5-player dungeons, which are called expeditions, or the 50 versus 50 player wars that you can sign up for. I haven't done those yet. I definitely want to check them out, but haven't at this point, so I'm leaving those off of these lists. Okay, well, that brings us to our last topic. So I wanted to talk about what I think this means for ESO. Having been an ESO content creator for about a year and a half now, I'm pretty invested into the game and I do have a lot of love for it. I've seen a lot of people wondering if people are going to leave ESO for New World and if New World is going to kill ESO and this and that. And this is what I think. If someone really enjoys ESO, there isn't another game that's going to kill it for them. Maybe they take a break and stop playing ESO for a little bit while they try out New World, or maybe they just cut back their playtime with ESO while they try it out. But overall, if the Elder Scrolls Online remains a good game, people will keep playing it. It's funny, in the WoW community, there's been a thing for a while now where they're always on the lookout for the next big MMO, the WoW killer they call it. And now I think people are finally realizing that the only thing that is really going to kill WoW is Blizzard. Not listening to their community, and I won't even go into all the horrible legal action going on there right now, but my heart's out to anyone that had to endure what's going on there. But my point is, unless ZeniMax fails to keep ESO being a good game, there isn't really any reason why it can't coexist with any other MMO. As for me, I'm definitely going to give New World a fair shake when it releases, and at least fully level a character and see how I'm enjoying it from there. I'm not going to stop creating ESO content or playing ESO. I still really enjoy it, and just because there's another game now that I'm really intrigued by, doesn't mean I want to set ESO aside. Yeah, my playtime may go down a little bit on the release of New World. You know, I think that's healthy. You should play other games. You shouldn't just have one game and that's all you do is play that one game. You know, if that's your thing, fine, but I personally don't think that's very healthy. So if something new comes out that intrigues you, you don't have to feel like you're turning your back on ESO or call it quitting. You know, you can enjoy other games. That's fine. So I wouldn't worry about ESO. I think as long as they still make good content, people are going to keep playing it. I know I'm going to. But if New World ends up great, I think that is a wonderful thing for the MMO genre altogether. It'll force other developers to step up their game and try to match that greatness. It'll definitely be intriguing to see how it all unfolds and how Amazon handles the long-term development of the game. Thank you all so much for watching. I'm really interested to hear what those of you think that have participated in the beta testing so far. Let me know if you're looking forward to it and if you're planning on still playing your main MMO alongside of New World. I want to give a big thanks to my current Patreon supporters. If you'd like to see how you can help the channel and support through Patreon, I'll have a link in the description below. And then a special thanks to Nicholas, Simon, Privy League Guild on PlayStation's EU server, Cougar's Bay and the Cougar City Guild, Gandalf Legris, Stridig, and Delta. Thank you so much for stopping by. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.